Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. An incredibly exciting time for Warhammer the Old World. Huge releases with Grand Cafe, and Games Workshop have also kindly sent me a copy of the new match play guide to have a look at a little bit early. Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description. So before we delve right in, a little bit of context. At the time I'm reading this and making this video, I haven't seen the FAQ or the errata, and when they announced it, and all I know right now is that it's due around the same time and may provide a little bit of extra context to some of the stuff that's in here. Maybe you have already seen reviews of this, maybe you've already seen leaks of this. I've got a lot of videos to make at the moment, especially with Cafe going on, and this probably won't be my first release. This might be a number of days after this has actually gone up for pre-order, so I'm sure there's been plenty of other reviews anyway, so do bear all that in mind. But I want to give you my own take on it from someone who's quite a casual player, plays a lot of narrative games, but does have some interest in match play from afar, but also match play in a more casual context at your club. I do go to the odd event, but I'm definitely not a tournament scene regular, but I'm really excited about this as well and the possibilities and what I think this will do for the game and the knock-on effect, or what it can do anyway. So what is this book? In its essence, it's a full colour 48-page arcing journal-sized glossy booklet, and it's full of colour pictures. That's very, very shiny and very, very nice and well produced, just like all of the publications for these things are. But it's a little bit different to the others because it's aimed more at match play, almost solely at match play, though I think there are plenty of elements in here that you can take for casual games as well, and even narrative games. There's some really fun elements to add to your games of Warhammer the Old World. There are parts of this that are very, very basic, how to set up your event, how to do matchups and all those kind of things. And I can already imagine that some sectors of the community will get a little bit sneery, a little bit eye-rolly about Games Workshop telling them how to do a certain thing or that. And I personally don't interpret it that way. I see it as a way of providing a complete package. So if you are brand new and you're creating a new community, maybe you've started a few players together at your local store, never played Warhammer Fantasy before, and you're growing together, you've done an escalation league, and now you're wanting to do events, then this is a really good one-stop way of giving you an outline, an idea of how to run events. You don't have to run your events in this way, but it's a guideline. But I imagine because some of the language is obviously Games Workshop in its style, people will deliberately have a bit of faux outrage at some of those things. But as we go through it, I think we can sort of debunk most of those things and move past. At its core, what it's full of is some really excellent ideas around how you may play your match play games and run your match play events. So as we open up the book properly, I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time on each page. We've seen the contents already, and that was something that the community have been speculating around for a little while. And we have Hail to the Victor, which is just an introduction to what this book is really, and a nice fluffy introduction, lots of wordy kind of chat around the game of Warhammer. And then the Valor Before Dishonor part is pretty standard as well. You'd imagine this kind of thing. It's about being a good opponent, not cheating, not doing dodgy things. And to a limited point, which I think is quite interesting, about talking about the game, making sure that both players are reminding each other of certain things that need to be done, so there's not so many gotchas. It's not so much take backs, but more that kind of, it's both players' responsibility to say, well, have you checked your dice? Have you dispelled this? Have you done that before you move on to the next stage? And I think that's really nice and maybe offsets that one line in the main rulebook about no takebacks that people sometimes take a little bit too seriously. The match play in the Old World section is very much sort of formulaic stuff that you see even in main rulebooks, telling you what you need, obviously miniatures, terrain, gaming accessories and all of that kind of stuff, and we'll skim over that fairly quickly as well. Organising event is going to be a section, again, that some people will roll their eyes at if you're an experienced TO, but again, you have to picture this book as an all-encompassing book which will teach someone who's never run an event before how to maybe do it or go about it. And maybe it's a new player who's never been to an event. It might give them a little bit more of an idea about what to expect when they go. It talks about organisers and stores and referees and
spare players, attendees, and what they're responsible for. There's some universal stuff there. I imagine they'll be eye rolling at this as well, and it talks about using official Citadel and Forge World miniatures. Again, this is for official Games Workshop events, obviously. If you're running an event in an independent store, they have no control, and nor would they even expect to exert control over that. So if anyone feels a little bit of faux outrage at those kind of lines, I'd move past it quickly. It's not really what the core of this book is about. And then we get on to the new scoring system, or a potential scoring system should you choose to use it. Lots of people will continue to use a 20-0 system or all the other options that are out there, but it gives you an option, a recommended option by them. And then you have this new setup here. So you've got a crushing defeat, resounding defeat, marginal defeat, draw, marginal victory, resounding victory, crushing victory. And you obviously have the opposites of that and how many tournament points you get for those from 0 to 6. And then it gives you here a chart that basically says, depending on the size of the game, so if we're looking for up to 2,000 points, and then the VP difference, and it will tell you what you would have got. And again, it expands a little bit on what was already in the standard rulebook, so this goes into more depth. Some TOs will like this, some TOs won't. And one of the best things about events all around the world is that there's usually variety. Different TOs run different packs and different events, and there's lots of different styles, and you can go to the kind of events that you like to. There's a section on the pairing of players about basically making sure it's random in the first round, and then a Swiss style pairing, which basically means you're more likely to play a player that's on a similar number of wins or victory points as you each subsequent round. And that's not new to Wargaming at all. But again, if you're new to running events or new to attending events, that might give you a little bit of an explanation about how you might expect to find it once you're there. And so far, so good. I'll be honest, it's exactly what I expected, having already seen and owned 2 of the Middle-earth strategy battle game match play guides. It's very, very basic stuff if you've been to events before, but the information is all there should you need it. Now, the next section is when it starts getting a little bit more interesting, because we're interested in what Games Workshop think, or what the SDS team think that we should be doing for comp and how we should be running our games. And I think this gives us a nice basis to work from as a community. So let's dive into the army composition. We have 3 sections: open war, grand melee, and combined arms. Open war is pretty much straight out of the rulebook, with a little note that mercenaries and allied contingents are always permitted. Grand Melee is very similar to what we've already seen at many Warhammer World events, and it really just does a very light touch of trimming off the top number of points you can spend on your most powerful characters and units. You may not spend more than 25% of your army's total points value on a single character or unit. So in most cases, if you're playing a 2,000 point game, that means 500 points. That does trim off some of the big powerful dragon character riding builds, but also I don't know if it does too much with some of the units. Stops big Death Star units above 500 points, but there's not too many units getting to that point level. But your army may also include any number of level 1 or level 2, but level 3 and level 4 wizards are capped at 1 per 1,000 points. And again, I think this is pretty much exactly the same as we saw at the Throne of Skulls comp in the UK in the last year. There's a little note there about limitations not applying to special characters, and that mercenaries are always permitted, and that allied contingents are permitted at the organiser's discretion. Then we moved on to combined arms, which is really an expansion of the rule of 3, which we have seen in certain events as well, which basically stops you repeating certain unit types. So we got 0 to 3 on characters, 0 to 4 on core units, 0 to 3 on special units, and 0 to 2 on rare or mercenary units as well. So these numbers increase for every full 1,000 points above 2,000 points as well. And of course, there's that same note about under combined arms composition rules. Mercenaries are always permitted, and allied contingents are permitted at the organiser's discretion. So on first reading, I thought they suddenly scaled up. So open war is obviously open, but then grand melee and then combined arms would be even stronger. And I just assumed that the grand melee restrictions also applied to the combined arms. I thought it added an extra layer, but I asked the question, and it's just the way I read it. They are separate ideas, and I think One of the things I would do if I was running events, because I like to even things out a little bit, would be to probably apply the second two as the same thing. So have grand melee and combined arms rules applied as the comp for the battle, or at least to start. It's still pretty light comp, a lot lighter comp than we've seen for a lot of the comp systems out there. So I think this provides a nice basis and gives us a little bit of an idea that what Games Workshop is thinking about, but it is still pretty light. And that's why it's very interesting to see how other changes to the rules around FAQ and things will maybe promote the use of certain troop types like infantry more. And we'll see later with the scenarios for this, how they also do that as well. So it's a real mixture. Rather than going it's crazy comp heavy and really upending and changing the game, you can subtly change the meta and the way things are played via some small rules changes and the scenarios later in the book, and leave the actual composition fairly light, which I prefer. You don't want to tell people they can't take things. That's a shame. Dragons maybe were really strong at the start, maybe not so much now, but they were non-existent in 8th edition, and it would be really sad to go too heavy and just lose them all again, and that's definitely not the case based on reading this alone. So we move past some beautiful colour shots, and then we move on to the field of battle. And again, I'm not going to read this page by page because I think you can do that yourselves. It's pretty straightforward stuff about setting up and placing terrain and what order you do it. It's just to make this, as I keep saying, a bit of a complete package as well. And then we have an introduction to the match play scenarios about how you choose them, how an organizer might decide to do that, and how you do deployment at the start as well. It talks about game length, whether you have fixed or whether you have random. I quite like the way it works out, the random game length, it's all good. Breakpoint, which is something that we saw introduced in one of the scenarios in the core rulebook, and I think that's a really interesting element to add into the game as well, and it's an optional kind of extra on some of the scenarios. Some of them it recommends you take. I do like it, especially if the table setup and the map is right. Talks a little bit about time limit as well. Then we move on to victory, and victory points remain the way to win the game. There's no big change here, no big U-turn on any of this. This is very much a subtle touch on what was already built on in the main rulebook. We've got common objectives, which we've already been working to in our games. So the dead or fled stuff's all the same. King is dead is the same. We've got trophies of war as well. All of these things are still included. So basically killing your enemy and preventing your own things from getting killed remain the core of the game, and that's not changing and going away. For anyone who was slightly worried that it would get too much like controlling areas of a circular point on a map or something like that, there's elements of it, but not like that. It's not Age of Sigmar or War Machine or any of those things. It's very much still Warhammer. We have special features, which we'll cover a little bit later, and then you can see breaking the enemy is there as one of the common objectives. Then we move on to the scenarios themselves, and we have scenario 1, which is very much a standard battle lines type scenario. There's very little rules on there, and a lot of it you add in layers. And the way it works with the secondary objectives, which we'll cover in more detail a little bit later on, they can really change the way these scenarios are. So just by saying, oh, I played scenario 1, it doesn't really tell you the whole story anymore, but it depends how the TO or EO decides to layer on the secondary objectives or how different it may be. You can just play it straight like this without a secondary objective, and it's very much a standard battle line, but also you can add extra. And if you read the secondary objectives section, it says this scenario may include baggage trains, the special features, domination, or the strategic locations 2, 3, or 4. And again, we'll see those a little bit later on, but they are basically things to go after on the battlefield. And rather than have them marked on this map, because you may choose them and you've got some options, that gives you almost like a second layer to flick over to afterwards. Same with scenario 2, while the hill is very much the core of the scenario and what is in the center, you can also have secondary objectives, and this option it says scenario may include baggage trains and or the special features secondary objectives. So that, again, the TO has a little bit of choice about how much of those secondary objectives they put in there. Controlling the hill is very much straightforward. It's something that in previous editions that the old watchtower scenario was often converted into. Rather than trying to get into a building, you had to be on a hill. But I really like it. You've got to have a unit strength of 10 or more to be able to control it. This starts to look at numbers of infantry units maybe you've got in your army build to make sure that you've got units to control these things. And as we go into the secondary objectives later on, that becomes important yet again. Scenario 3 is drawn battle lines, and it's that slightly diagonal one, but it's much, much wider than it was in the main rule book, where you're only sort of 6 or 12 inches apart. 24 inches apart takes away some of that immediacy and stops it being quite as janky in a match play game and gives players more of a chance. So you can see your deployment maps on there. I'm not going to read any of these scenarios word for word for you. I'm trying to give you a bit of an overview flavour of what's going on there. Scenario special rules, you have rules for reserves, which are interesting as well. And then again, you've got more secondary objectives, and that uses strategic locations 3. So you flick to another page on the map and see where they are. And they may include domination and baggage train as well. Scenario 4, close quarters. So in one sense, it's very much two battle lines going up against each other, but the scenario special rules means that you're playing in a narrow mountain pass. So rather than playing it long ways, just means that the short edges of the board count as impassable. So you can't have units fleeing off the side or arriving from reserve there. Very, very simple, but just kind of changes it in a very subtle way. Again, secondary objectives are where you'll get the extra flavour and make it not just a standard battle line here. And it tells you to use strategic locations 2, and the secondary objective may include domination. Scenario 5, a chance encounter, means you're deploying in opposite corners. That's going to be one of those that some people absolutely hate and other people love. There's no extra special rules as a standard, and then you've got your secondary objectives, again includes domination and or the baggage train. And then scenario 6, and the last one, is encirclement, which I know a few people were concerned about the name before it has all been revealed, but you can see the deployment map there. It's not all too standard at all. And again, it's the secondary scenarios will actually add the flavour to that with the strategic locations number 4, and then you may include obviously the secondary objectives, including the baggage train and the special features as well. And I've whizzed through those deliberately because they are very, very basic maps. There's not an awful lot there. It's nice and simple, and it's the secondary objectives that layer on top that will really add to the game. And a lot of it is may add, and I think that is really important. And of course, everyone can do what they want anyway. This is a guideline. So I hope that when we go through the secondary objective section, people will like some of them, I'm sure, not like others, and TOs will make their decisions about which ones work and which ones don't. But I think there's enough in them that it will add a little bit of potential change to the game and around the way that lists are built, which I think is needed in some ways. We want our games of Warhammer to look a lot more like games of Warhammer, with a few more inventory blocks and things on the table, and there are enough subtle changes in there that might encourage people to do that more. And hopefully, having not seen them yet, some of those FAQ and errata changes as well will double down on that and really give the meta a bit of a shake-up. Secondary objectives, and I think this is where the book comes to life, and where I hope the community really gives it a try for some of these things. There will be parts that people don't like because they see it too much of a move away from Warhammer, but I think this is quite light and quite subtle, and because the whole idea is you layer in what you want, as much or as little as you want, we'll see a decent range of variance over the different events that are out there. Some events will use very few of these or just a couple. Some will add lots of extra stuff, including the extra special rules that are in the back of the book as well. But they're things I think that make sense on a battlefield. So this isn't janky. This isn't going after a 12-inch neoprene circle like you might see in 40k or Age of Sigmar. There's no defined building shapes or sizes, none of that stuff. We're talking about a baggage train, which is something you may well see on a battlefield, and it tells you what size it should be, and it's a really cool modelling opportunity as well. And how you control it, guess what, it's unit strength 10 or more, which is really, really important as well. And there's lots of unit strength talking about, especially when we move on to breakpoint, and we've talked about it a little bit already, needing a certain number of total unit strength throughout an army, working out what's important. And that means having wounds on the table, but also having numbers sometimes. The biggest way of getting wounds on the table, or unit size, is to have a number of infantry troops, and I think and hope that's going to be something really positive for the game. It tells you how to destroy the baggage. You just stay in base combat all the way to the start of the next turn, essentially. And if you've got control of it, then it's destroyed again. So you get victory points for that. Things to go for, proper tactical things to go for that change the game a little bit, and I really, really like it. You've got special features as well. It tells you how to place them. Now we know a little bit about special features from the main rule book. It tells you how to control them. Again, unit strength 10 or more, all of this kind of pushing towards needing units on the table that remain above unit strength 10 at the end of the game, not just having a unit of 10. As soon as they're down to 8 from a couple of casualties, they won't be able to do that job anymore. So it's making sure those units are big enough and trying to keep them alive alive enough so that at the end of the game they can score for you as well. And it's got some, a nice little table there on unusual properties for the special features. Just good fun things built in, but it all feels logical for something as a battle. We saw domination mentioned as an optional secondary objective in a lot of the scenarios, and essentially domination is controlling quarters with unit strength and then getting victory points for it. We've got strategic locations, which are objective markers, 40mm round bases, and there's some lovely pictures in this book of certain ways of modelling. I'm sure there'll be, if there's not already been by the time you're watching this, an article on Warcom about how to do that as well, and how to place them and how to control them. And I like these. These are small markers that you need to control, and they're in reasonable places on the battlefield that would narratively make sense. If you're fighting a battle, you try to control points of the battlefield. That's what battles are about. They're not just about running and smashing face. You might want to control a hill or something like that, and this is how you make that into a workable objective in a game, so it's matched play rather than just narrative, and you do it with an evenly placed objective, and you've got all the placement of those objective markers there. So when it tells you in those scenarios use strategic locations 2, you overlay that onto the map that's already there, and 3 and 4 and so on, and they match in with those scenarios really well. And again, you're needing a certain unit strength to control those at the end of the game, and for me that makes a lot of sense, and brings the idea of having troops on the table. It's not just infantry, it's unit strength to do that, core units to do that, but I think it's really important, and I'm glad they've added this into the game. But again, it is layered, and if you don't want to have those in your scenarios, you can choose to leave them out. Quite often it says may, sometimes it says must, but again, it's your game, your event, you run it out the way you want to. And there are some of those pictures of the conversions and things they've made for the baggage train and for those objectives there, which are nice and cool to see, and I'm going to have some fun making some of those up for sure. And we get even more colour pictures in the book, which is always nice to look at colour pictures in the book. Then we move on to doubles events, and again I saw a couple of comments early on before people knew what this was about, a couple of eye-rolling things about this. Do they need separate scenarios? Why ever not? Why ever not? It talks a little bit about how your army composition might change, about how alliances work, etc. And again, it's very much just extrapolating, expanding out what's in the standard rule book. But this is a one-place all booklet. If you want to run an event or go to an event, it tells you what to expect, and that's kind of there. There's a few little things to consider. So it's considerations, not things you must do, things to take into account around how you work the breakpoint, King is Dead, and Trophies of War. Then we have our doubles scenario. So one is long ways, which is always fun at events when they're in long strips, but you've got double envelopment there. So you've got your 2 teams, and then you've got your reserves as well. And again, it tells you baggage trains and domination and or strategic locations 3 or 4. So those layers are there, the opportunity to choose, which basically takes this scenario into 3 or 4 different variations of it, which gives us loads of different play. Double scenario 2 is forward battle lines. Again, a slightly different deployment map there when you're a little bit closer on those edges as well, which is quite cool. Again, more second objective scenario. Scenario may include baggage trains and or strategic relations 2 or 3. So it's may again, so you can just play it as a different deployment map, or you can play it in a way that you add these extra secondary objectives on there, which I really encourage people to do. At least give it a good go in the community and see how it changes the competitive scene. And then we move on to the last double scenario, number 3, the old outpost, and there's a special feature in the middle, and they are a lot closer there. You've seen all the rules for the special features already, and again, may include the baggage train and or strategic locations 4. I think these are great. They're slightly different to the standard ones. You could even play these for singles as well if you wanted to as well. But again, they're just good extra fun, and with doubles events, they're quite often more laid back. So we're pretty much there. We're towards the end of the book now, but they've just added a little bit more around team events and some extra things. So let's take a quick look at those. And we have the Alliance of Warlords, which is essentially an idea of how to run a team event. And there's something like this in the Middle-earth versions of this book as well. And the Middle-earth writer definitely went to team events, so had an experience of it. And I'm sure there's been some trickle. I'm not saying he's written this, but I'm sure there's been some cross sort of idea sharing, and also the experience of the people who write for Warhammer the Old Block but play at events and things themselves. There are team events emerging at the moment. I've been watching videos on YouTube recently of different things. So again, this gives you some ideas about how you may go about running a team event. There are other ways of doing it, and I don't think they're trying to impose their idea on anyone, but it just gives you an idea how you might work out your rankings, your scoring, how you do your pairing. Again, if you're new to running a team event and you're unsure how to do it, this gives you one way of doing it, and it's nice to see there. Had you not had the chance to go to one before and experience it yourselves, which less people have with team events for sure, then is a nice little addition to the book, in my opinion. And then to end with, we have additional rules. There's a little bit about escalation events, or when your events grow in size in terms of your points level and how you achieve that. And then secret objectives. Again, this is an extra thing that you can add to your scenarios if you want to. And these are little cards. And the idea is that you choose them before your tournament starts, and you have to use one each round. And you don't know what's going to happen before that round, so you pick one to use, and if you get your secret objective, you can get some extra victory points. Very fun, very narrative based. I'd love to see those in the kind of Throne of Skulls kind of events. I know a lot of events won't go for those things. You'll see them as a little bit too swingy, but again, it's layers and it's something a little bit extra for people who want to do it. It's definitely fun, and definitely shows and reminds us that match play should be fun as well. It's not just an esports version of playing toy soldiers. You can have fun, but also try to balance it at the same time. And that final comment there really sums it up for me. This is a nice basis of which you can go away and run events from, and I'll be really interested to see how this interacts with the meta. I hope the competitive community don't disregard this completely and decide not to use it, because I think that would be really sad. I think the 6 main scenarios and all the optional layers of the different objectives and things are solid, and I think they're better than what exists in the current rulebook to play match play games. I'd be surprised if people didn't think that, but I'm sure some people won't. I'm not saying everyone will like every scenario or every secondary objective. I think at its core, the 6 scenarios and some of those objectives could make a really nice sort of worldwide community sort of starting points. And then after that, that's where you get your different flavour and layers. And some TOs will want to use all of the stuff, including the fun secret secondary objectives. Some people will want to use very little of it, maybe not baggage trains, or maybe only certain of the secondary objective maps on top. And we'll see that change. But that's the beauty of this. This is just a sandbox tool to start you off with. I don't think, regardless of the Games Workshop's language at the beginning of these kind of books, they're going to say use our own miniatures. They're going to say do all that, because it's set out that if you are going to run an official event, they could say as per this guide. But they're not telling the whole community what to do with these things, and I think this is a really nice way of doing it. And I'm really excited to find out, as you already know while watching this probably, what the errata and the FAQ have done to interlace with some of this, that I really think will help promote more infantry in the game, more standard units in the game, bigger units for unit strength reasons, for breakpoint reasons as well, making sure you've got enough wounds on the table, essentially, so you don't lose the game early on through breakpoint. I think the breakpoint, using that more in games, is really positive. As much as certain big behemoths are hard to kill, their unit strength wise, they won't be as good for you. If you do manage to kill one of those, you could suddenly find yourself with not much on the table and find you've lost the game by breakpoint. So I like the look of breakpoint. Something very interesting. It makes sense totally tactically. If your army breaks because there's not enough money left and they run away, the other side has won the game. That's real. That's the way warfare would work. And I really like some of those objectives as well. They seem to be placed in sensible places on the battlefield, and they are places that you would strategically want to control as well. And I like it. There's nothing too janky there. You're not trying to rescue anyone and take them off the table. I like all that stuff, but they're not trying to add any of that into the match play. And I hope that's the way it's seen. That's the way I've interpreted it, reading it on my own, not discussing this with anyone at this stage. I'll be really interested to see what the community thinks of this, the competitive community, and I hope they give it a chance and let it bed in for maybe another 12 months, 18 months, and really see how it works, especially with all these extra rules that may or may not have been added with the errata and FAQ. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the book. I'm really interested to see what a wide range of the community think of this, how they think their local communities might interact with it, what they think they might do with it. I just hope that the community gives it a chance, and let's see how it works. If it doesn't work out, then the community will do what it always does and adjust and come up with their own things, which is really cool. But thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, please do check out my Patreon. It really helps support me. Check out the channel sponsor, Counterattack Bases, and all the other links I've got in my video description as well. Like the video, comment below, subscribe, all of that stuff. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.